In the history of Israel, the Ark of God was not merely a religious object, it was the symbol of God's direct presence. It was considered the gateway of heaven on earth. However, when King David attempted to bring it from Kiriath-Jearim to Jerusalem, a tragedy occurred that still shocks readers today: the sudden death of Uzzah. In the Bible, God's holiness is sometimes compared to electricity. Electricity is useful, but if you touch it with bare hands without following its rules, it can take your life. The ark was not just a piece of furniture. Uzzah forgot that God's holiness is so intense that no sinful human being, no matter how good their intentions, can stand before it. According to R.C. Sproul, Uzzah assumed that his hand was cleaner than the mud, but in reality, the mud had not broken God's command. Uzzah had. In God's eyes, the hand of a sinful human being is more unclean than mud. To understand Uzzah's punishment, we must look at Numbers 4:15 and 7:9. Only the Kohathite clan of the Levites was permitted to carry the ark. Among Levi's 3 sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, only the Kohathites were given the special responsibility of transporting the ark. Rules: 1. The ark was not to be carried on a cart but on the shoulders using poles. 2. The Kohathites were strictly forbidden to touch the holy objects. If they did, they would die. Numbers 4:15 clearly warns, "When the camp is to move, the Kohathites shall come to carry the holy things, but they must not touch them, or they will die." Uzzah was likely a Kohathite, or at least a Levite, since the ark had remained in his father Abinadab's house for 20 years, and their family was responsible for its care. In Uzzah's case, 2 serious violations of the Kohathite laws occurred. 1. Using a new cart. God's command was, "Carry it on your shoulders." But David and Uzzah chose, "Put it on a cart." This was an imitation of the Philistines. When we abandon God's word and adopt the world's easier methods in serving Him, danger begins. 2. Touching with an unholy hand. When the ark seemed about to fall, Uzzah grabbed it. From a human perspective, his intentions seemed good, but God's command was clear: "Do not touch it, or you will die." God's holiness stands above every human emergency. Uzzah prioritized his human instinct over God's command. Both Uzzah and David violated these rules. They followed the Philistines by using a new cart. When the Philistines returned the ark, they used a new cart. 1 Samuel 6. They were not punished because they did not know God's law, but Israel did. David and Uzzah abandoned God's word and adopted the world's method. From a human point of view, Uzzah appears to be a hero. He prevented the ark from falling into the mud. But the Bible teaches that God's holiness is greater than human emotions. Uzzah's action contained hidden human pride. He believed God needed his help and that he could save the Lord of the universe. His touch was not protection, it was disobedience. By touching the ark, Uzzah acted as if he were a high priest. Only the high priest was allowed to enter the most holy place once a year. Many people ask, was Uzzah's good intention not valued? Consider this example. If a doctor, with good intentions, gives the wrong medicine to save a patient, the patient will still die. Good intentions cannot override scientific or spiritual laws. Touching the ark was like placing a hand on God's sovereignty itself. By judging Uzzah, God taught David, "I am not a God who moves at the king's command. Rather, the king must move according to my law." David also bore responsibility for Uzzah's death. He should have instructed the Levites to carry the ark on their shoulders. Uzzah was merely a servant obeying the king's command. This incident shows that when leaders treat God's word lightly, innocent people suffer the consequences. However, this event transformed David. After 3 months, he corrected his mistake. 1. He had the ark carried on shoulders. 2. He offered sacrifices every 6 steps. 3. He abandoned worldly methods and followed God's word. We often speak of a loving God, but do we fear His holiness? The story of Uzzah reminds us that God is not someone to be taken lightly. There was music, a crowd, and a grand celebration, but there was no knowledge of the word. Is your church or ministry focused only on outward splendor? Inside the ark were the tablets of the 10 Commandments, manna, and Aaron's staff, symbols of God's justice and provision. To touch the ark was to challenge God's judgment. Ultimately, we must understand this: God did not kill Uzzah. Rather, Uzzah entered the realm of death himself. Just as violating the law of gravity causes a person to fall, violating the law of holiness meant Uzzah's body could not endure that glory. This was justice, not injustice.